to our very own Mr. Seaver.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Canos, members of the faculty, distinguished veterans and their families, but most importantly, students at Crestview Middle School. It's indeed an honor for me to be asked to speak here today. It's been just a little over 30 years that I've been a veteran of the United States Army. The 3 years I spent in the Airborne Infantry were the only time since kindergarten that I haven't been in a school either as a student or a teacher. And here at Crestview, we're a 7 Habits school. Now the full title of that program is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So it begs the question, what does it mean to be effective? And more importantly, how do you make effective decisions for your life? So I guess the first thing we need to be clear on is what it means to be effective. Now, even though I'm a teacher, and contrary to the beliefs of most of my students, I don't know everything. And I'll freely admit that I had to look up the word effective to make sure I knew exactly what it meant. Here's what I found. The definition of effective is this: successful in producing a desired result. That seems simple, really. Effective is successful in producing a desired result. So when I was asked to speak today, it caused me to reflect on how I got to this point in my life. What successes have I had? And did I achieve my desired results? And quite frankly, the answer to those questions always came back to my military service and how they shaped my decision making. You see, people have been using the 7 Habits to make effective decisions for a long time. They haven't always been called the 7 Habits, but the principles were there. And those habits were very much applied during my military service without me even realizing it. So here are the 7 habits I use for my military service that hopefully will be of some value to you as you move forward in your life. Now, I was a pretty typical teenager. I went to school, earned reasonable grades, played sports, had a lot of fun with my friends, lived at home with my mom and dad that provided for every one of my needs, and I worked a part-time job for some extra cash. But as high school graduation got closer, my dad took me aside and told me that he and mom didn't have enough money to send me to a big university, and that after I graduated high school, I was going to be pretty much on my own to get a college education. So for the first time, I was going to have to take charge of my own life. I had no choice but to be proactive, and that's habit number 1. I realized that I was free to choose my own path, that I alone would be responsible for the choices that I made, and I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with my life, but continuing to live at home with my mom and dad and work a part-time job, I was pretty sure wasn't it. So how was I going to be proactive? How was I going to take charge of my life under those circumstances? One evening I was watching television, and a commercial came on advertising a new program that the United States Army had called the Veterans Educational Assistance Program. It was VEAP for short. And the Army is not the only one who uses those types of acronyms. Rockwood loves those acronyms as well. If you join the Army for at least 3 years, they would match your contribution to a college savings fund dollar for dollar. After 3 years, you could have as much as $40,000 towards a college education. So I decided to be proactive, took charge of my life, and went down to the recruiting station to join the United States Army. So if you want to make effective decisions in your life and be in charge, you need to be proactive. But what was I going to do in the Army? I needed a plan. And this is where habit number 2 comes in, which is begin with the end in mind. I was getting ready to sign a contract to be in the Army for 3 years. And I want you students to think about this. 3 years is a long time. It's the same length of time as going through 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade here at Crestview. Whatever I decided to do, it needed to be something that I'd like to do, something I would enjoy. There were a lot of jobs in the Army, but the only one that looked like it would be fun was being a paratrooper. I mean, how exciting can that be? You're jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. So I just signed out to be an airborne infantryman. This was only the beginning, and I needed to keep the end in mind. And I also signed up for the Veterans Educational Assistance Program and opted to put the maximum amount of money into that fund for my college education. and also decided that I'd put away half of my income that I earned into a savings account for college as well. So I began with the end in mind. I initiated the plan, and my plan was to have at least $60,000 for college. And in 1984 dollars, that's quite a bit. As a matter of fact, that'd be about $138,000 today. So if you want to make effective decisions, you need to have a plan, and that needs to begin with the end in mind. But before I got my hands on all that money, I was going to have to keep my priorities straight and put first things first, and that's habit number 3. But as I was about to find out, nobody puts first things first like the U.S. Army. And in Army basic training, work always comes first. You see, Army basic training at the Infantry Training School at Fort Benning, Georgia, was 8 weeks of simply having my life and attitudes change from Steve Asher to Private Asher. It was marked by one 18-hour training day after another, without much of a break for anything other than eating and sleeping. The day would begin with barracks cleaning and 45 minutes of calisthenics, followed by a 4 to 5 mile run, all in the dark. The training would start soon after that, and that was all about just becoming a soldier. It was hour after hour of me simply just putting my head down and enduring what I thought was a very surreal situation at the time. The whole time just looking forward to my next meal and the next time I would get to go to sleep. I realized that if I went to church on Sunday morning, they'd give me at least an hour each week that I could sit quietly and rest without being yelled at by drill sergeants, all of whom at that time were Vietnam combat vets with the goal of nothing more than to weed out prospective trainees who weren't mentally or physically tough enough to become an effective infantryman. And believe me, those guys did a lot of yelling. It was 8 full weeks before I got a break and was allowed to have some sort of a pass to leave the training station. I boarded a bus, rode into town, and went straight to Dunkin' Donuts. I sat on a park bench and ate donuts until I was sick. I then got back on the bus, came back to the barracks, and slept for 12 hours. For me, at that moment in my life, junk food and sleep was putting first things first. But I knew the next day infantry school was going to start, and the Army was going to put their first things first again, and that was the work of becoming a combat infantryman. So if you want to make effective decisions, you need to act on your priorities and put first things first. I graduated basic training on a Sunday morning and immediately started infantry school that afternoon. In infantry school, the focus of training is simply not to become a soldier, but to learn mutual benefit in working effectively as a squad member. It was an environment where I constantly had to think win-win, and that's habit number 4. See, by this time, the Army had taught me not to think only of myself and my needs, but to think as a team member and the needs of a group. Here I learned that if one succeeds, all succeeds. If one was punished, we all took the punishment along with him. We learned to function and use our skills as a true team. We learned faster solutions to problems, worked to our strengths, and supported the weaknesses of the other team members. In infantry school, we each learned that what was best for the whole group was more important than our own personal interests. We built true win-win relationships and learned to rely upon one another's skills because we knew that someday our lives might depend upon that. So if you want to make effective decisions, you need to have mutual respect for the people around you and think win-win. After graduating infantry school, several of my friends and I stayed together and we were transferred to the basic airborne course. This is where I learned to jump out of airplanes and acquire the skills of a paratrooper that I joined the Army to begin with in the first place. It's also where I learned the importance of seeking first to understand and then be understood, which is habit number 5. See, I can't think of any place where listening before you do something would be more important than Army jump school. I mean, think about this. You're voluntarily going to throw your body out of a perfectly good airplane going 200 miles per hour, 1,500 feet in pitch darkness. I'd better make sure that I listened carefully to what the instructors had to say. Army jump school is 3 weeks of intense training. Week 1 is called ground week. Here's where you're taught how to exit the door of an aircraft properly and land without injuring ourselves. It was hour after hour of practice, time after time, exiting the door, time after time, dropping off the platform and executing a proper landing. That week was a bad back in the future in the making. Week number 2 is Tower Week. Still involved hour after hour of practicing exiting the door, but now they had a torture device called the Swingland Trainer to help you to perfect your landing skills. And by now, the training also involved learning how to steer a parachute by being dropped from a 250-foot tower. Then week number 3 was jump week, and this is where everything that you learned was tested. And this is where you had to truly make sure that you have seeked first to understand. Because if you hadn't, the result could be very, very bad. So jump week was marked by 5 parachute jumps. 4 from airplanes during daylight hours with varying amounts of equipment, and the last one from a jet at night with a full combat load. During those jumps, we were tested to make sure that we understood the solution to the problems that we might face, and quick problem solving if necessary. If you want to make effective decisions, you need to listen to those who've been there before you and seek first to understand. So everything that I had done up until that point in the Army had been training and learning. Now I was going to have to go use my newly acquired skills for real. I was going to have to work as a true team member. I was going to have to synergize with a real airborne infantry platoon, and that is habit number 6. See, in the airborne infantry, the whole's greater than the sum of its parts. Working together is better than working alone. Each member of the platoon has to be flexible enough to learn his job as well as the job of someone else. This is synergy at its best, and be tested in the fall of 1983. See, in October of that year, my platoon got put into a very difficult situation. The circumstances required that we work together, rely upon one another's strengths, and successfully accomplish the task at hand, and still get one another home safely. It was during one of the darkest moments of that time that I understood the importance of the education and knowledge that each man that I served with had. I decided that if I got through that situation, I'd use the money that I was earning for my college education for a teaching degree. It seemed quite clear to me at the time that I wanted to be able to instill the importance of education on others that I had witnessed firsthand from those men that I had served with. We synergized well under those extremely trying situations, and we all came home. So if you want to make effective decisions, sometimes you need to rely upon others and the synergy you've created with them. So when we returned home to Fort Bragg, my friends and I took the opportunity to relax and celebrate by sharpening the saw, and that's habit number 7. See, one of the common themes of military service, and I think every one of these veterans over here could tell you this, is the deep relationships you build with friends that you serve with. You work hard together and you play hard. All this increases the effectiveness of the group and renews your body, your heart, your mind, and your soul. And this is what sharpening the saw is all about. My friends and I love to do a lot of things together, a lot of physical activities. We play volleyball, basketball, run, swim in the ocean, and go to the gym. But of all those things, going to the gym together and working out had the biggest impact on my life, but I wouldn't even know it at the time. You see, sharpening the saw and taking time to find enjoyment and meaning in your life is important. When I left the Army and started my new life in college, I needed to have a way to care for my physical well-being still at that point. So one of the first things I did was join a local gym. And that decision would ultimately set things in motion for me. So if you want to make effective decisions, you need to find time to relax and have some fun by sharpening the saw. Eventually, that gym that I joined, I was asked to work at. Before it was over with, I became the manager there. And when I graduated college with my teaching degree in history, I had very little job experience to put on my resume. I had airborne infantryman, and I had gym manager. And I was pretty sure that being a paratrooper and the skills that I'd learned there weren't going to be much use in a classroom. And I wasn't sure how working in a gym was going to help me out much either. But one afternoon, I got a call from a man named Bill Blackburn. And he was the principal of a school way out in town named Ellisville. And that school's name was Crestview Junior High. It was in a district called Rockwood. Believe it or not, I'd never heard of either one of them. Dr. Blackburn was a veteran of the Army himself, and he liked to have veterans on his staff. And he told me that Crestview was preparing to move into the old Lafayette High School building, and they were going to turn the old wrestling room into a weight room. That's back there in that corner. And oh yeah, Dr. Blackburn told me they also had a history job open. Anyway, I interviewed with Dr. Blackburn. He offered me the job, and that was 26 years ago, and I've been a Crestview teacher ever since. So looking back, I can see how my military service and the 7 Habits molded my life without me even realizing it. Following the principles of the 7 Habits allowed me to make effective decisions that helped me to get the desired results for my life, which was become a history teacher and serve my students in a great school district. So to the students of Crestview Middle School, you're only a few minutes away from this assembly ending. Only a few minutes away from a lifetime of decisions, and just moments from needing to make effective decisions to be successful in producing your desired results for your life. It's not going to be easy. You have the 7 habits of highly effective people to guide you. So be proactive and take charge of your life. Have a plan and begin with the end in mind. Decide what your priorities are and put first things first. Know that you need to listen to truly understand, and then having mutual respect for those around you will bring the greatest wins in your life. And if you maintain great relationships with lots of synergy and keep balance in your life by sharpening the saw, you will indeed set yourself on a path to effectively producing the desired results for your life. Thank you very much.